Right, I think I'm going to get started. My phone says 9:30, my computer says something different, but that's another problem. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are delighted to be running through our webinar around content strategy, quick wins to sharpen your output. I'm just going to run through a couple of little intro slides and then we will get right into the content of it, and I'll introduce myself and Helen, who is co-hosting with me today. We are recording this webinar and we will send out the recording afterwards if you can't stay on for the whole time. We're expecting this to run around half an hour or so this morning. So hopefully, again, if you do have questions, just pop them into the Q&A chat at the bottom. We'll have a chance to answer the questions at the end. But I will get started now. Lovely. So for those of you who don't know Stratton Craig, we are a written communications agency, and we do all kinds of writing and strategy work for written communications. And that means we work on everything from social posts to sustainability reports. But the most important things that we think on this slide are the red words in the bottom here that talk about it's actually the content that achieves things or makes a difference that we try to work for, not the content that just, wallpapers the internet. And one of the things that we think, in the age of AI, is really that we're starting to see so much more of that generic kind of content. And what we think is actually going to really make a difference in the future is helping people make their content as effective as possible. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. So to do that, we're going to be covering off the regular content strategy malfunctions that we see. And I hope everybody will probably find an element of commonality in this, because we do tend to see that the same issues pop up over and over again with our clients. We're going to talk a little bit about how to focus your efforts, where they're going to make the most impact. We're going to talk about getting in shape, and that means using the resources you have most effectively. I know we probably all have a wish list of resources you'd like to have, but there's quite often things you can do with what you've got already that might make a difference. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about getting going. And by that, we mean establishing a regular process to maintain momentum and get a regular publishing cadence in place. So before we do that, as I mentioned, Helen has stepped in for our colleague Anna, who has unfortunately been stricken with a chest infection, but she was going to be leading us. So Helen, thank you again for stepping up at the last minute. But my name is Claire. I'm head of copy and strategy here at Stratton Craig. I have more than 20 years experience. It's probably closer to 25 now, terrifying. But I spent a lot of my career in finance before joining Stratton Craig 8 years ago. So I've had experience from a client side and an agency side. And I think that has helped give me some perspective in terms of the kinds of challenges people struggle with in large organizations. And it really is, as I've said before, the same things we see coming up over and over again that we can help clients with. I'll hand over to Helen now to introduce herself.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Helen. I'm one of the account directors here at Stratton Craig. I've been working in marketing and communications agencies now for just under 10 years, and I joined Stratton Craig back in 2023. Typically, I work across financial services, energies, technology sectors, and I'm responsible for just overseeing content management as well as developing strategies to help shape future ideas and execution. So content strategy malfunctions. Many of our clients feel that they're constantly unable to get on top of their content production and put the thought behind content to make it effective. So what's going wrong? Every business does in fact have a content strategy. So if your business isn't producing content or it's producing it ad hoc, that's still a content strategy. But what it would benefit from is a rethink to make everything that you produce more effective. On this slide, we've listed out some of the things that we often hear from our clients to suggest that their content strategy isn't working as well as it could. So it could be that they feel that they can't keep up with the demands. It could be that SEO isn't as rewarding as it used to be, or that engagement isn't translating into business wins. It could be you're constantly looking elsewhere for inspiration to replicate across your own content, or it could even be that your team is just looking to you for all of the answers. But these aren't just things that we've picked up from our own clients. They're actively felt across marketing and communication teams across many different organizations. And on the screen, you'll see some of the results from a CMI survey, which looked at the reason why comms and marketing professionals don't feel that their content strategy is working well. So 54% said lack of resource, 20% noted an emphasis on quantity over quality, 42% said creating content consistently, 23% cited unrealistic expectations, and 42% said a lack of clear goals. And we're going to be tackling some of these themes throughout the session. But first, we're going to do a poll.
Yes, we thought this might be a nice opportunity to sense check with the people on the call whether these are the same challenges you're facing, or whether there are any other differences in terms of what you're looking at. So I'm just going to run a very quick poll if everything works. So, yeah, what we're interested in understanding is really what the main challenges people are facing in terms of creating effective content, whether that's lack of resources, quantity over quality, lack of goals or priorities, or maintaining momentum. I'll just give a couple more moments for everybody to respond, and then I'll share the results at the end. Oh, wonderful. I'm going to end the poll now and, oh, still a couple coming in. I'm going to end the poll now and then share the results. So actually, it's coming in quite clearly at lack of clear goals and priorities as the most challenging thing, and then maintaining momentum, which I do think is probably aligns really closely with the kinds of things people say when they're speaking to us. And I think certainly some of the things that we're going to talk about addressing throughout the session today. So hopefully I've stopped sharing that poll, and then I'm going to move back to Helen.
Thank you. So from research and conversations that we've had with clients, on screen here, you'll see some of the reasons why content strategies aren't working very well. And they're usually a result of a lack of resource, which might be that your team is too busy responding to other demands to be able to put focus and energy into a strategy. It could be alignment, so you can't agree on priorities for your content production, which means that you end up pulling in all different directions. Or it could be goals, which means that your goals aren't clear, so you find yourself creating content just for the sake of it. So for the rest of this webinar, we're going to run through our treatments to these issues.
You had a lighting change, Helen.
I have. I'm going to try and sort that out.
So the first section we wanted to talk about was about getting focused. And I think one of the things we quite often see is that people are thinking if you're writing interesting, well-written, engaging content, unfortunately, that's not always enough to be effective. You feel like it should be, but it's not actually effective. So what does good look like when it comes to content? So most of us would say that good content looks like this: something that gets a lot of likes, or it's going to drive sales or inquiries, or is it traffic you're looking for, or engagement? But we would argue that these things are only valuable if they're actually helping to drive the right business objectives. And this is again that point that we're talking about with alignment. So if your content isn't actively driving towards the same goals that you're pulling towards as a business, then you may be focusing on the wrong things. So for example, more engagement, but from an audience that doesn't buy from you, won't necessarily be helpful. So that alone isn't going to tell you what you need to know in terms of whether your content's performing. Again, inquiries from people that without the budget to use your services also isn't helpful. So there may need to be something you can do with your content to specify, actually this is a premium service. We're looking for these kinds of clients. Sounds like an awful thing to say, but it might save your business a lot of time and effort in terms of spending time on inquiries that aren't going to go anywhere. And then an increase in sales. I mean, you would think that this is something you would never need to complain about. But what if this was for a service line that you knew was going to be irrelevant in a number of years, and you actually need to be driving sales for services with more longevity that you're trying to introduce? So again, there's a real level of subtlety in terms of having thought through what it is you want your content to achieve, how that's going to contribute to your business goals, and therefore where you need to be focusing on. So, put simply, what does good look like for us? We think it's really about that alignment with business goals. And this sounds simpler, I think, than it actually is to achieve in a large organization. We think many of the things on continue to success, but the bigger picture really is focused on understanding that outcome that you're achieving. So it might be that you need to identify, is it breaking into a new market? Is that what you need to be focusing on? Is it getting fewer but better inquiries, as I mentioned earlier? Is it raising awareness of a new service offering online? Or is it about expanding reach to a new audience? It might even be reducing complaints and returns. We once did a copywriting project on a help page, and actually the objective was to not hear anything from clients because we'd answered all those questions correctly. And that was an interesting one for me, and a KPI that was not getting any questions from somebody, getting no action rather than actual action. But one challenge we find is that in a large organization, it might be that you've got people pulling in different directions. You might have leaders with different priorities. Sometimes they're even motivated by different KPIs themselves. And then that can impact in terms of what their expectations are from the marketing and comms department and how content can help them get there. So we just wanted to share a few quick tools that might be able to help focus your efforts, really help prioritize what you're going to be writing and why, and then also get that agreement inside an organization, because that can be the real challenge. So, content pillars. This is a really important starting point, we think, for most content strategies. And this is a very pure exercise in prioritization. So, selecting content pillars helps you identify the themes, services, or ideas that are going to be most relevant to your audience. We've selected some examples on the angles you might want to lean into here on this page. So differentiation, you might want to be focusing on what you do differently or better than others. And you might make that decision if you're working in a particularly crowded space. Actually, showcasing expertise that everybody else has as well isn't going to set you apart. So that's about, being really clear about what it is you want your content to do on that front. Or in terms of expertise, it might be about needing to showcase a breadth of expertise that you have that your audience isn't aware of. And then again, a decision needs to be made about whether that's depth of expertise in one specific area that you want to show, or is it a breadth of expertise that you want to show that you've got skills and experience across a wide range of sectors or subject areas. Knowledge, well, this might be something unique or proprietary that you have as an organization, whether that's insight or research, and that can be a really powerful anchor for content. And then finally, this point about relevance. This is about really understanding what it is your audience comes to you, the challenges you help them solve, and the pain points you can fix them with your solutions. So again, these are different ways that you can focus your efforts. And at the end result of a conversation around these, ideally, what you're going to end up with is not trying to say absolutely everything about everything that you could, because that's not going to end up effective for all of your audience. So you'll stop throwing mud at the wall and start saying, more meaningful things about a few focused topics and some defined the space that you can own. The next tool that we wanted to share is a really simple way to have a look at customer journey mapping. I read a great article the other day that was talking about how the marketing funnel is dead. And one of the challenges it said was that the marketing funnel relies on an idea that a customer will always move through a linear journey and will follow every step. And in actual fact, what you find is that customers are notoriously disobedient and will wiggle around all over the place. And that's why I prefer a representation like this, which much more of a curved line. And the idea, I think, of the marketing funnel isn't that people have to move through in a straight line. I think it's more that you need to be providing people the information they need for whatever stage of that journey they're at. And it may be that they bounce back to the beginning a number of times and they come back again, or it might be, somebody's going to spend a lot of time in the consideration or purchase phase. They're going to need might be looking for a lot more information. The other thing we see impacting this also is that in large organizations, you might be pitching for work that's, going to be determined by a procurement panel, and you might end up with a lot of different decision makers there that you need to persuade. And given that every person has a different communication style or preference, it might be that you need a range of these different kinds of information and material to persuade different kind of people at different stages of the journey. So this is really just about understanding what have I got in place at the moment? What am I expecting people to, where can they get the information they need to about me if they need to learn what we're doing, learn how we can help them? If they already know that, how can I help them make a decision and understand what's different or better about? Do I need to make more one-page product comparison sheets? Do I need to improve the material that I provide for our sales teams to help people get them over the line? So again, it's just stopping and doing a little bit of thinking about what's working now, what have we got in place, where are there points of friction that might be stopping our customers from converting, and therefore, if I only have a limited resource that I can put into content, where's it going to make the most difference in terms of optimizing a customer journey? I think I'm talking too much. I'm biting into Helen's time. And then finally, the last but very much not least, this is something that we often see companies overlook, or it becomes neglected and not necessarily used as effectively as it could. And a content calendar sounds like such a simple tool, but really what it helps to do is raise visibility within an organization. So firstly, it's a great visual tool for your marketing and comms department itself to know, okay, I'm covering these topics for these audiences. You can see laid out on a page your coverage and your plan, whether you've got, you're a little bit heavy in one sector or another sector, or if you're a little bit heavy for one audience or another. But if it's just being used by your marketing department, then you might be missing an opportunity there, because really this needs to be also about raising awareness within an organization about what's coming up, what content they can rely on to have conversations with their clients. Is there anything that they can plan a meeting or a conversation around in advance? And again, it's a really great discipline to sort of sense check. Where am I at in terms of what I was hoping to cover for content? Are there gaps we need to fill? And have we shared this information with as many people as possible to make it as useful as possible, not just to us to say that we've published it, but to the people that might be able to do something else with it within an organization. So, having talked too much, I'm now going to hand back to Helen.
Thank you. So, get in shape. This is all about getting your team ready to create effective content. And quality versus quantity is an age-old question. And as content experts, we strongly believe that quality is more important, and the SEO gods would agree with us. Google's guidance on automated ranking systems is that it's best to provide helpful, reliable information that's primarily created to benefit people and not search engines. So it's no longer okay to keep putting out mediocre content that's full of keywords and is really unpleasant for people to read. Instead, it needs to be optimized for people to read. The problem is that quality can mean lots of different things, and some people will have their own ideas about that. So generally speaking, these are all the kinds of things that we're aiming for when helping clients produce effective content. We're looking for content which is on brand, expert-led, unique, thought-provoking, and consistent in style. And on screen, you'll see two key steps to creating that quality output. So number one is set the bar, and that means give people clear goalposts to aim for. This also means you have something to quality check against. Number two is select the talent, and this is all about creating the right kind of team to create the output that you're looking for. And we're going to be running through both of these over the next couple of slides. So first of all, setting the bar. When people have their own views on what quality looks like, these points on screen will help you get there. So having the resources in place makes it much easier to reach sign off and achieve a consistency. And within the blueprint, we'll have tone of voice guidelines, which is all about making sure that content is on brand. Style guide, which is about keeping consistency on small details. Approved angles and takeaway. And this is all about making sure that the ideas and expertise that you're writing about are right for your business. And finally, having a bank of content that you like, as this can serve as a really helpful resource of inspiration for people. And next, priming the team. So creating good thought leadership content that says something fresh and interesting in a beautifully written way. In order to do this, you'll need to select the right writer for each job. So for example, the person that's writing your social media content might not be the right person to be writing your annual report content. You'll need to speak to your experts. So to create thought leaders from your in-house experts, you'll need to extract insights from them. Interviews work really well for this, but you might need help from a third party. it can be quite awkward interviewing your boss, and you might not be able to get the full picture if they're worried about not being completely candid. And it's also important to note here that while you might have great experts in-house, they might not be great writers. And finally, get a human to finesse everything. If you're using AI, make sure that you finesse it. The more that AI is used, the more that generic content is produced, and we'll find ourselves reading the same in this world of technological change sentence over and over again. So make sure that a human polishes it to make sure that you keep the fresh angle and takeaway front of center.
Excellent. Thanks, Helen. So our final section is about getting going. And I think this is going to be helpful for those people that are struggling with momentum on the call, because we do find that one of the things people talk to us a lot about is it's easy to establish a content program. It's much harder to maintain that enthusiasm and momentum for it, because it does become hard work in a way. So we've got a few ideas about how to make that a little bit easier and how we can keep the ideas flowing, as this slide says. And our main focus is around not leaving it to chance to get good ideas out of a business. And we think the good ideas rely on input from three key teams. Firstly, that's the sales teams, to understand what your audience priorities are. This could be any client-facing team, though. It can also be insights from the contact center can be really useful and helpful in terms of understanding what your customers are struggling with, the things that they ask for repeatedly, feedback on what you're offering. It can give you really good ideas in terms of what they're worrying about, what they're focused on. And next, it's about talking to your subject matter experts for their unique insights or thought leadership around the product and services that you offer. Now, the thing is, quite often, subject matter experts can be very immersed in what they do, and they will find every aspect of it fascinating. What we want to do as content people is try and match up the parts of that that are useful and interesting with the insight from the sales team or the client facing teams around what's going to be most relevant to our audience. And then finally, obviously, marketing and comms team in terms of understanding how to bring those ideas to life, how to translate complex ideas into language that's going to resonate with your target audience, how to use formats and creative techniques to really bring life to your content. But the thing about getting all input from these three teams is it's not something that you need to leave to chance. You don't have to just hope that you stumble on a golden idea. You can put in place some processes that are going to help sort of, I want to say, industrialize. It feels like a bit impersonal, but really establish a bit more of a production line in terms of how it is that you extract useful insight and turn it into great content for your organization. So this is a very simple model that we talk around how to capture those insights from organization, how to translate them into content, package them up in different ways, and then distribute them. And it sounds very simple, but there might be some steps you can put in place that will help that. So that first point around capturing insights, this is about getting the right people in the room to make the right decisions. It might be that you need to schedule a quarterly editorial panel to get the representatives of those teams together, agree what's going to be written about, and then put your plans in place. You can sometimes find that you will have a very rich seam of ideas from an hour and a half sitting down together that will keep you going for a whole quarter. And then you need to be very clear in terms of setting up your next steps in terms of what that is. So Helen mentioned interviews with experts earlier. This can be a really simple way to extract insight from people that might otherwise not have time to sit down and write a thought leadership piece themselves. Again, we can earn a huge amount from a 20-minute call with an executive or a subject matter expert, and quite often find several angles to turn that into content. So there are a few different ways you can approach that one. In terms of translating those insights, that's about getting the right people on board, whether that's a writer or whether it's an agency who can help you sort of understand what's going to be most relevant for your audience, turn that into something that's going to be engaging for them, and then getting the right people involved to package that up and send that out. The other thing that we find can be a bit challenging for organizations is sign-offs. Oh, I can feel eyes rolling. Um, and that's because in large organizations, quite often a lot of people will want to have a say about almost every aspect of a communication. We find it can be really helpful to get people clear on what their responsibility for content is. So you will have a couple of rounds of review. If you're not in charge of the tone of voice for the organization, you don't get to decide how to use apostrophes and commas. And actually, your input is probably most useful in terms of checking the factual accuracy, etc. So we do suggest being really clear with people about what they're responsible for in content sign-offs, and it can be a way to help people stay in their lanes, and you don't end up having arguments about, starting sentences with and but, when you're just trying to get something published. Anyway, that was the last bit of content that I wanted to run through with you today. And what we were hoping for you guys to take away from this session is really that strategy can seem like a big, I guess, massive task that people sort of know what they need to do to get right, but feel like it can be too big a thing to tackle. But what we wanted to really focus on today is that there are some quick things that you can always do to help focus your efforts where they're going to make the most impact. And that can be just about agreeing what good looks like and the people you need to get there, understanding the skills of your people and applying them where it's going to make the most impact. And then finally, that piece around creating a process is just about not leaving these things to chance. Great insights can be created, you can manufacture them, and it's just about getting the right people in the rooms and the right sort of mechanism and facilities to get those insights out, and then packaged up and published for your audience. Now, we have also put all of this same information into our Get It Done guide, which is available on our website. This is not a promo thing, it's all perfectly free, so you can jump on and download it. We'll also be sharing this with everybody as a follow-up afterwards. So we'll send a link to this, share it far and wide. And again, a few more tools we didn't mention today, but hopefully something I think that will help people just make those few small changes that can make everything you do more effective and impactful. So that is what we wanted to cover off today with 4 minutes to spare, so winning. And I'll just see if we've got any questions. No open questions so far. If you did want to ask any questions, feel free to pop them in there now. No problem if not. If not, we'll finish nicely on time and we'll pat ourselves on the back for that. But yeah, do pop some questions in if you have them, or if you think of them afterwards, feel free to email them through to us. We're always happy to follow up afterwards. Oh, marvelous. I'm going to assume we've gotten everything right then, and nobody needs to ask us anything. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that was helpful, and do get in touch if you would like to speak to us at all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.